In this episode of Man vs. Marriage, that music sucks. In this episode of Man vs. Marriage, 5 pieces of advice we would give newly married couples or couples that want to start over. That's right. We will be right back. Welcome back to another episode of Man vs. Marriage. It is I, the Q Dog, in need of some better DJ skills. We kind of use this for our other one. Watch this. Yes. There we go. I realize now that you can't hear any of this.
Nope. It's in your ears.
So that's a bummer. I'll turn it off here in a minute. But this is Man vs. Marriage, the podcast. I'm your host, Quincy W. Moran. This is my wife on the other side of the video or the audio. Her name is Jeanne Moran. Jeanne, say what's up to the people.
What's up to the peoples?
That's right. What is up to the peoples? And we are coming to you from the Moran family studio. And we are excited to be here. Well, I'm excited to be here. I'm not so sure about Jeanne, but she is here.
It's okay.
Nah, it's okay. It's okay. But today we're going to talk about 5 pieces of advice that we would give newlyweds or somebody who is starting over. Before we do that, I want you to remember that if you are new to the program, we'll be getting to you in just a minute. But for you listeners who are going through something, Quincy at Mvsmpodcast.com, Quincy at Mvsmpodcast.com. And that Mvsm is Man vs. Marriage. Email us with comments, questions, forget the concerns, comments and questions. Email us there. And then if you want to go rock the brand, Man vs. Marriage, check out quincymoran.com/apparel. And you can find all the brands we're creating there to impact your life in a very positive way. And if you are new to the program, I just want to give you the 1-minute elevator pitch. Boy, that'd be a long elevator ride, wouldn't it? About what is this program about? Who are you listening to? If you're new, Jeanne and I are going on 25 years married at the time of this recording. We have 8 children. We have 1 boy, 7 girls. We have a set of triplets, a set of twins. We have autism in our life with 3 of our children to varying degrees. And about 15 years ago or so, we found ourselves in full survival mode. We were just roommates getting along. We were not intentional. We were not invested in making our relationship better because of what life had dealt us at that particular moment. So through that, we discovered that this is not what we signed up for. And so we wanted to reinvest in our relationship. We wanted to be intentional. We wanted to have a freaking marriage that was awesome. And I guess every marriage goes through that ebb and flow type scenario, but things were compounding in our life. How? Well, I don't know if you've ever had multiple births in your family, but man, our triplets for their first, few months of life were on life support in the NICU, as the same with our twins. And then our son was born with microtia, so he had hard of hearing. He had some learning disabilities, and then would go on to be diagnosed with autism. Our 2 oldest triplets, the same. There was a time where the babysitters we had, they were sexually molesting our children. There were crazy things going on health-wise with a couple of the girls, and brain surgeries and shunts and emergencies like you wouldn't believe. We were about to lose our house. Our finances were garbage. I was working hard, but our finances just didn't stretch. We were eating out of food banks. And we really had to right the ship. And thank God for Coach Rita. Coach Rita gave us the opportunity to get our life and our marriage and our relationship back on track. and we took full advantage of it. And then we got to a point where it was like, our marriage is in such a great place. I have to pay this forward. And we began this podcast at the time of the recording, going on 6 years ago. So, welcome to the program. If you can relate to any of those things, then you belong here at this podcast. If you are going through something right now, email us, Quincy at mvsmpodcast.com, and allow us the opportunity to help you. We're not licensed therapists. We're simply a couple that's been together, if you include the time we dated, for a quarter of a freaking century. And that's a long time. And we went from a good marriage when we got married to being on the rocks for a while. And then we knew we loved each other, but things just didn't go as planned, which is, it happens. And then we turned it around, and now in present day, we do have a wonderful marriage. It still has problems. Just because you have a podcast doesn't mean you ain't got no problems, man. But we're here and we're willing. And throughout the 300 plus episodes, we have had some pretty intense conversations. And so I got to thinking about it, and I said, we could have used some additional advice. And podcasting was not mainstream. I was listening to some training, and there were like 460 million a couple years ago at that particular time, podcast listeners. 460 plus million. It's a lot of people on planet Earth. I mean, there's 8 billion, but that's a lot of listeners. It's a lot of people that want to consume content for one reason or another. Now, I presume it's well over 500 million. And so we're here for a specific reason. Our reason is to help you along your journey when it comes to marriage. And so Jeanne and I mean, we did a class in the beginning. There were plenty of red flags that were brought up. We started with a class full. We ended, and there were much fewer people. But honey, we were talking earlier. I'll grab the notebook here in a minute. We've had a pre-discussion, but I want this to be an open discussion. And then we will take this episode with what we kind of decide those 5 pieces of advice are. And we're going to do a deep dive show on each one of them. About 30 minutes or less is what I'm committed to. And you can tell I've been talking for over 6 minutes. And so that's going to be a challenge for me. Jeanne has only got a couple words in edgewise. But what's some of the advice you wish you would have had before we got married? It's easier to go back now because you have almost 25 years of experience, but what's some of the advice you wish you would have had? And we'll get to this here in just a few.
I think the first 2 that came to mind when we talked about it was A, keep your family out of your marriage. And B, we should have spent more time being married and being us. You can date. That's fine. That's, you're still in the honeymoon phase. When you first get married, you should still be in that phase. But we got some news from the doctor that kind of sped up the process to us having kids because they thought we couldn't have kids. And that was one of the major factors in our relationship. Was we both wanted a large family, and that was something that we really had our heart set on. So it kind of took our intimacy and our connection, and I don't want to say it was bad because it wasn't bad. It just made it more of a trying to get pregnant.
Yeah, I think we were both in such a hurry for some reason. I don't know what the reason is, but I think we were both in such a hurry to start a family that we forgot to actually enjoy being married.
Yeah, and I would have helped because we didn't know. Like Quincy had lived with his mom before and shared the apartment, and he lived with a couple of guy friends that he had and shared an apartment. I had never lived with anybody outside of my parents. I lived with my grandmother for a couple months, but I had never lived with somebody that I didn't know their habits to. I didn't know what it was like having somebody leave socks all over the house. Drove me insane because he would sit down on the couch, and wherever he sat, that's where his socks went. He doesn't do that anymore. But in the beginning, it was just kind of like, I don't know. It was just one of those irritations. It's not a big deal. Still, you don't know their habits. and you start noticing things that irritate you in the beginning. And it sounds really stupid, but I promise you, it's a real thing where we start noticing he gets frustrated because I will stack mail up in piles on the counter and be like, yeah, when it's time to pay the bills, I'll get to it. Otherwise, they just get stacked on the counter. That's a pet peeve for him.
Well, it's not just you stack them on the counter, you stack stacks of stuff in various places, so you try to catch up with the mail wherever it might be. It could be on the kitchen counter, front of the kitchen counter. There could be another stack on the back of the kitchen counter. There could be some on grandpa's microwave.
But now, thankfully, I have an iPhone, so everything comes on my iPhone too. So if I lose the mail, I can still find it. But that's beside the point. We didn't know each other's habits, and so we would nitpick at each other a little bit. And you have little arguments because it's the adjustment period of having somebody in your space and sharing your space and pay bills together. Which the only thing we really paid together prior to getting married was the wedding.
Yeah.
And so when we had to live together, we finally moved in and it was like, okay, now we have rent. Now we have groceries. Now we have this. Now we have that. Now, just to kind of give you an idea of where we were when we got married, rent was like $525. Slight change since then.
Yeah, it's a pretty good sized apartment, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1 master bedroom. I mean,
It was a nice sized
living room,
apartment for
kitchen.
$525. And back then we were struggling to pay that. So
No doubt.
We
were struggling to pay it
when we moved into our first house, it was like, I don't even know how we managed to afford our first house, but it was the same thing. Like when we moved into our first house, we already had 4 kids and the 5th one coming.
Mm-hmm.
And she was only around for 12 months before we had 2 more coming. So we just did it all fast. We didn't know that we were going to have multiples. Had we known that, we probably would have spaced the kids. I mean, obviously not unless you're purposely trying for multiples, but I would have spaced things out. If I knew now what I knew then, knowing that we were going to have 8 kids, I would have planned more sleep before we got pregnant.
I knew you before kids and after kids, and I don't think there's a scenario by which you have enough sleep. I think you're a sleeper.
I'm not a morning person, so
fair, and that further credits my
yeah
opinion. But with that being said, I think I do understand part of. I just kind of went back to memory lane while you were talking, trying to pay attention to what you were saying and agreeing with what you were saying to a high degree. But I remember the idea of still being young when my kids were adults.
Yeah.
So that was a factor in it for me. But looking at it though, I wished I would have had some serious advice given to me to say, and I just wasn't about creating memories then. You know what I'm saying? Memories and traditions. I was back and forth between 2 states. Planning every single minute of the day, Mr. Fun, Mr. Party Man. Not party man in the sense that I was going out and getting drunk, but I was the life of the party wherever I went. I just really enjoyed that lifestyle.
And doing things for everybody under the sun.
Correct. And the advice I wish I would have gotten, like if somebody would have sat me down, it's just sheer ignorance, that you don't know that. But as big as we are now on creating memories, it's like, hey, take a year or 2 to travel, save your money, go create memories,
do things you may not be able to carry a small child with you to do.
Yeah. And that's just something that we didn't know. We were in a hurry to start a family because we wanted a family.
Yeah.
But also because, when my kids are 20, I want to be in my 40s. When my kids, when I'm 50, I want them to be in their, mid to late 20s and, their 30s, so that we could share more of life together. We had no idea that we were going to have kids with special needs and that we wouldn't get that time just us after all the kids moved out. So in full transparency, that's disappointing because one of the things I look forward to is us someday just it being us. Now we'll have it in some form because we'll have to, plan the babysitting or the adult sitting and, be able to go out. But we're always going to have that concern. I say always, there's going to be that concern that what if one of these two adults has a moment like, we had in one of the previous episodes, and we're not here to help or protect somebody? So there's a laundry list of concerns that come along with that. But I think it's important for us there. Ed Milet says you're best equipped to help the person you used to be. So we're not necessarily going to be for every new marriage, but we can help the people that have found themselves in a place where communication has been broken. There's been some disappointment. There's been some challenges in life that you just have no training on how to work through and process. And then, unbeknownst to you as a couple, you start to quietly blame each other for those problems. We can help you get back on the same team. We can help you get back to home team. We can help you redesign your relationship and get it on the right path. And that's what's important to us. And we want to help. We want to help you. We want to help the people in our lives. I mean, what does it mean? What has the difference been for you? Putting you on the spot here, but go back to that night, you and me in recliners, and I'm coaching football. I'm trying to be a pastor, and um, you're there, you're pregnant, you're just begging me, like, please come back home and, be with your family first. I need you. And you're in tears. What has that meant to you that I made the choice to do that?
It's changed everything. I mean, you can ask the older five, well, three of the five that would probably retain, um, the difference between when they were younger and we had the smaller ones and you were gone all the time and it was just us versus when you were home. I mean, the three smaller ones now probably got more of you from the get go than everybody else did.
They got more at a younger age.
Yes.
They started in different places, but they got
Mhm.
more of me because they all got basically the same of me, but some of the kids were older at that
So
point.
the older ones understood that you were gone more, and that played a part in some of the behavioral issues. That played a part in some of my own anger and depression and things of that nature because it gets lonely when you're at home with kids all the time, especially when you don't sleep much. And that's, I mean, autism has made it so that I probably will never get caught up on my sleep, but it is what it is. At the time, though, it was I would sleep in a recliner chair in our daughter's room, and we didn't have, a shared bed. Many nights we didn't have a shared bed. I'd be crawling in bed right before you were getting up to go to work.
Yeah.
That was hard for us. But then it also became more of we wanted to do sports. We wanted to do things with the kids. We wanted the kids to have as much normal as we could give them. And so having you home made that easier because I couldn't do it with all of them by myself and shuffle everybody to and from. And when they're older, sure, once they got into middle school and teen years, it wasn't so hard as far as getting them to and from places because we just made people wait. But when they're little, you can't just let people wait. You have to be hands on at all times. But it was hard because it seemed like at one point in our life, thinking back on it, I try really hard not to hold a grudge against people, but there are some that I knew asked you for things because you wouldn't say no. You just wouldn't say no. And no matter how much I begged or asked them, don't ask him to do that. Please don't ask him to do that. He doesn't have the time for it. He doesn't have, they would still do it knowing you would say yes. Even if I told you I don't want you to do it, you would say yes. Over the years, that's changed. And I think that's been one of the hardest things for people who come in contact with us now to swallow is you and I have come to terms with if we don't both agree that this is what needs to happen or where we need to be or we can, make a sacrifice on our time or whatever, it doesn't happen. But that's taken years to get to that place and that took you giving up some things to be home with us, and Rita giving us the tools to say, check in, see where you're at, because we didn't even check in emotionally after some of those major traumas that we had,
Yeah.
and you were still working all the time and doing all these extra things. And that, I think, having you shut down some of those things and be more present changed how we viewed and how we processed some of the crap we went through from that point, because now you were a present person in all of it from start to finish, rather than me calling you and saying, hey, we have an emergency, this is happening, meet you there. You were there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes a
And
big difference.
I was out, searching. I wasn't out doing.
It wasn't frivolous stuff. You were trying to make a living for us. You were
Yeah.
trying to, find that one thing that was going to take care of us. And at the same time, I think people took advantage of that, um, and had you helping them with other things that weren't necessarily your path.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. There's a lot of truth in there. And then I was also out looking for words of affirmation. I was out looking for people who would tell me that I matter. And it the amount of positive, the amount of gratification, the amount of fulfillment that I got when I became more present at home. There were all these little people who wanted what I had. That's all. It
Mm-hmm.
became such a part of me that I absolutely love it. Like I love it. And just looking back, I had to make a decision that some of my, I say ancestors, some of my family before me did not.
Yeah.
And giving up coaching football and, kind of giving up the idea of being a pastor somewhere. But really, I came to the truth that my first ministry anyway is my family. And if I'm not, some people will say, well, God's gonna give your family grace when you're not there, and I look
It
at it,
doesn't replace you.
it doesn't replace the dad.
Yeah.
It does not. And there are times with work where you have to travel, or there can be hobbies or projects. But I was on a consistent basis. I was just out chasing these things, trying to, ease the concerns of Jeannie that we didn't have food in the cabinet, and rather than having the knowledge and the understanding that more than anything, my family needed my time. They needed my time and my energy, my focus and my intention. And my life changed for the better once I took responsibility for what it is that I was doing, what it is or who it was I was becoming, and who did I want to be. I needed to aspire to be someone else, because the version of me I was being, I wasn't showing up for myself, first of all. I was morbidly obese, incredibly unhealthy, which means I was not healthy. I was not a great example for our family. I wasn't healthy for you. I wasn't healthy for them. And I had invested so much time and energy, um, in creating this family with you, that I needed to give every opportunity for me to stick around. And so that's when I started to transform. And that's why, I look at it and I go, there's nothing that mattered more than getting my head on straight, becoming the man that you and my family in this world deserve, time and energy into you guys.
I think, though, if we would have spent the time just being us and married, we probably would have talked through some of those things and figured it out,
Hmm.
rather than jumping straight into parenthood and then, hoping that this boat has oars. We probably should have spent more time figuring that stuff out in the beginning. The other side of that was not getting our family and friends involved. It's really hard, um, when you first get married and you start nitpicking at each other because it's new. You're taking over each other's space. And some people, they live together before they're married, but it's still not the same. I promise you, the minute you sign that contract, there something shifts that you start noticing things more because now this is a permanent thing. And one lesson that we learned the hard way was I would get disgruntled, I would get upset about something, I would complain about it, and I would go talk to my mom. And my mom would talk to my dad because that's her spouse. And then they would get their own opinions of you and who you were and what they thought based on what made me unhappy. Same thing with friends. We have one we were talking about earlier. Somebody that I'm close with is going through some stuff. And as we're talking it through, you can see where it is very difficult for me to separate my friendship from coach because as a friend, I want to help you and agree with you. And I see your point. I understand and I share your frustration. But as a coach, I also see the flip side. And it's really difficult when you share those things with people who are going to be around you and your spouse or share your space. And now they have this opinion that even when you make the changes, even when you changed and started doing things differently, I still remember my mom saying, but it won't last. And it's nothing towards you personally, it's what she's experienced. Change doesn't last. Okay, well, in our particular situation, your change has lasted. It's definitely preceded our relationship and it's been great. But I still now have that hesitation of that relationship and what I can share and what I can't. And it sucks. It's a really bad place to be.
Yeah, and there was some of that caused me to lose a lot of trust in you and created some offense in me because I caught you talking bad about me to your mother. And I would not talk bad, whether it was Manny or anyone. I would not say a bad word about you because I felt, we had to deal with it, on our own, which there are people you can talk to about it. But when I heard you talking bad about me, it was like, it's not the same as you like cheating on me, but it was an absolute betrayal to me that, and I just took it too seriously. I'm a very emotional person. It was like, how could you? How could you run me down to your parents? There were already a significant amount of challenges in that area anyway. But things have come full circle. I'm not the perfect son-in-law, and I have never proclaimed to be. I'm not the perfect husband or the perfect father. I have plenty of flaws, but I can tell you this, that 9.5 times out of 9.5 times, my heart's in the right place, and I am doing the absolute best that I can. And when I fail, I try to make it right. And, God bless your dad for, in front of you and in front of his wife, just one day thanking me for being a good husband and a good father and for sticking around. And I thought to myself when he was thanking me for that, I've never considered not sticking around. This is the most.
That's because that would have been his response. If he had the situations that we had, he's told me before, I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it. The in and out of the hospitals, the hardships that we went through, the fighting, the the different things that we had to deal with. It's like I couldn't have done it. Watching your kid flatline on a table, I couldn't have done it. Man, I get it, but at the same time, there's a reason they had 2 kids and we have 8.
I know too, but still, we were in the truck the other day and a friend of mine was talking to us and saying, X, Y, and Z, this particular person couldn't do what you've done. He couldn't walk a day in your shoes, like trying to encourage me. And I think to myself, I go, I don't necessarily believe that because whatever level of difficulty showed up in his life, he did walk through it. He did face it. He did do his best as a young man to protect his family from his dad, who was an alcoholic. He did do those things. So what challenges were presented to him, he walked through it. Probably not perfectly, still probably dealing with some of it today. But I guess there are plenty of men who don't. There are plenty of women who don't.
Well, look at what we discovered when we went to the first parent meeting for people who had kids with autism. We were hoping we were going into a support system. That's what we were looking for. And they're in there talking about how more than 50% of the families who have a kid with autism end up in divorce because one parent decides this is too difficult. I'm not going to deal with it. That's the reality of it is you have a choice.
You do.
And we went through some things that I wouldn't pray on anybody,
Yeah.
but we made a choice. We're in it. Whatever comes of it, we're in it.
Yes.
You're not walking it by yourself. I'm not walking it by myself. And we had family behind us that were barking at us that we were making stupid choices and that we needed to not have so many kids and we need to not do these things. We had friends that were not behind our marriage from the get go. We came up against these things and we made a choice. Now, would I still talk to my parent? I don't talk to my mom at all when we're struggling with stuff. I don't talk to, um, I have one person family wise that I discuss things with, and usually we end up joking about stuff because we have similarities. But if we're struggling, like really struggling, I don't take it outside of you and me, unless you and I have already dealt with it. Because I mean, shit's going to be on the podcast anyway, so it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter.
That's right.
But I don't pin my frustration to anybody else so that they don't have that thought about you or they don't have that uncomfortableness when we're around, collectively in a group or what have you.
And then
The
let me just break in there real quick, and then you can finish your thought if, as long as you remember it. We're not saying you shouldn't have people to talk to. We're saying
mm-mm.
select the appropriate parties because if you, I mean, we grew up watching movies where the daughter is going and talking to her mom about her relationship. The hard part is, like you've already discussed, is that your parents will tend to see your spouse in that frame even after things have been repaired.
Well, I mean, think about it. You hurt my kid.
Hmm.
You upset my daughter. I mean, I'll tell you, anybody will tell you who knows us. You can come at me all you want to. You come at Quincy or my kids, and I'm a totally different person to deal with. It's just the nature of who we are. But I don't know. I guess I just do things differently now. I wish I would have known that in the beginning. The other one that I wish we would have known was I wish we would have known what our love languages were in the beginning. We didn't discover that until 10 years into it. And by then, we had already created habits that had pissed the other one off because we were loving each other the way that we wanted, not the way that we needed.
Yeah.
And it created a lot of confusion and frustration between us because we weren't hitting the mark.
Well, there's a bright side to that, which is the experiences that we've gone through, we can now use those to help other people. And there are people whose relationships may not stand through those things, so they can learn from our mistakes. I'm thankful for all that we've been through, even some of the treacherous things, because God has kind of shown me in such a way that there are people ahead of us in our journey that need the help, that
Hmm.
need the experiences that we have gone through and able to, in order to help them get on a path or get back on a path or even believe that it's possible to restore and reconcile their relationship. So I don't begrudge those. And I'm not really thinking that you are either, but it just would have
No.
been nice to avoid, with all that we had happening. It would have been nice to have the tools to kind of work through some of these things more effectively and learn the
Yeah.
lessons
I
sooner.
mean, it just some of the things that we learned with Rita, like rules of engagement, learning how to argue properly, that would have saved us a crap ton of
Yeah.
issues because we didn't approach things. We both come from situations where one shuts down in arguments because conflict is just not something you want to deal with. And the other one, we go for the jugular. You're going to come at me, I'm going to come at you harder, and I'm going to make sure it hurts. That's A, not a good combination. And B, we didn't learn that neither one of these really work.
Yeah, and for me, shutting down is really, I'm not really shutting down, it's contents under pressure, because when it gets to a particular point, it explodes. And then I start going for the jugular. And nobody's winning at that point.
See, I do one or the other. I will shut down and just, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to argue with it. I don't care. I will go into a depression hole and I will sit there and I'll stay there because I don't want to deal with it. Or I will go for the jugular to a point where you won't want to talk to me. And that's exactly what I want, is for you to shut up. Um, but we've learned the rules of engagement, which was, helping us figure out that we need to listen to the other person, and we need to give them a soft place to land and a place to be vulnerable and not use it as ammunition later. We had we known those things 10 years earlier, I think we would have saved ourselves a lot of grief. We probably would have been able to communicate past the lack of intimacy that we had due to our circumstances and our situation. We probably would have processed better through the emotions that we were dealing with kids going in and out of the hospital and Kiki flatlining and, helicopters having to turn around and land with your kid falling apart.
Yeah.
We never discussed those things. We just went through it, and we were still sitting in the emotion of it after the fact. So small things became big things because we had nowhere else to aim those emotions.
Yeah.
And you were the closest one to me. So it was just like, you know what? Screw it. Here you go. And it just made things worse because we didn't know that we needed to have a check-in and figure out, where are you? Where are we in this situation? I mean, watching your kid go through a 40-minute seizure. Where are you? Because I can tell you, I'm not okay. It was just those type of moments that we've learned watching our parents do it. You go through it, you survive it, you move on. That's not always the answer. If you just survive it, it's going to come back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to bite you in the ass, or it's going to explode because you didn't actually give yourself the minute to grieve what you went through. I mean, she didn't pass away, but we watched her flatline. So in essence, yes, she did. And it took a minute to kind of like, I need to breathe. I need to give myself a second to let that process through that I almost lost my kid. And so did you. And what did that look like for a second? And how did we process through it? And now that she's okay, what do we do moving forward so that we don't hang up on, is she going to die next time? Is there going to be a next time? Is there going to, because for a long time with what we went through, I lived waiting for the next shoe to fall. I just waited for it because we had thing after thing after thing, and we didn't know how to communicate through it.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that anything, you're never going to avoid every single problem. But the more that you can educate yourself and be intentional about how you communicate, how you interact, how you forgive, how you engage in a heated discussion, when it comes to arguing, are you fighting to win the argument, or are you fighting for what's right in your relationship, or is there a need to fight at all?
Yeah.
The more tools that you can have at your disposal, the better. Now, listen, like I've taught my kids, like I've taught our children, there's only so much you can learn from book knowledge. Experience is one of the greatest teachers there is, because then you have to apply what you've learned. And a lot of times you fail, but there are successes. And like the GOAT of college football teaches, good people learn from their mistakes. Great people learn from other people's mistakes. And that's what we seek to offer you. Just one of the many things we seek to offer you here is learn from what we learned from. And then when the time is right, you'll have the tools available to face some of these obstacles and challenges in your life. Don't take the pressure that it has to be perfect. I changed that part of my life, because as a faith believing Christian, there was one dude who was perfect and they killed him.
Yeah.
So what chance do I have? But I exchanged the unrealistic expectation of perfection, and I put in its place excellence, because you can achieve excellence. You cannot achieve perfection. So I just encourage you with that. So let's get to what your idea. We did some pre-work. We talked about what this would be, what our advice would be. Let's narrow it down to 5 total to the best of our ability. And then we will come back with shows that are based around these 5 points of almost like beginning new or for newlyweds.
Well, I think you need to open that up. I think you need to have the listeners email you and tell you what they think the 5 things should be that they wish they would have learned if they're, been married and struggling for a while. What are some of the things that you wish you would have known going through it? And then that will also help us kind of figure out what are the absolute top, because for us, it was communication. It was, rules of engagement. It was, wishing that we had spent more time with just the two of us. It was, knowing our love languages and our expectations. That was a big one, was defining our roles and what we wanted in our marriage and for a family, and our expectations of those roles, rather than just walking in and expecting your wife's going to do XYZ and you're going to do this and this and this. And we didn't do that.
No, we didn't know to do that. And
No.
that's the tough thing. And right now it seems that something that I believe we've figured out to a pretty high degree. There are men that want to be the leader of their home, and maybe they didn't have a great example. Maybe the example they have was smoke and mirrors at home. Could be.
Mm.
They want to be the leaders of their home because men are kind of built that way, the desire to lead and to protect. That's it's in our DNA.
Mm.
And so the harsh reality is we don't understand a lot of times that leadership is just putting your people in the position to win, to use the God-given talents they have to develop them for success. And it's the same in your home. If I'm here and I'm trying to control things and I'm trying to give you what my idea of being head of the household is, but I'm operating in things that are not my gift, then I'm sabotaging our success as a family. I'm sabotaging our relationship, and I don't realize it. The motivation is right. The heart intent is right. But really, I'm operating a little bit more out of ego because I think this is something I have to do. In reality, coordinating the family calendar, just as an easy example, coordinate the family calendar is your strength. It is your function as the CEO of our home, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you run the home day-to-day operation. I don't need to be involved in that. I need to let you flourish in what you do. Numbers, although I'm not great at them, they're more my thing. I've had the training. I have some of the expertise. So having you run the finances on your own because that's what you saw growing up, that doesn't help our family. What helps our family is this beautiful thing called deference or deferring. Let's defer to our strengths.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best thing that a leader in any organization, be it your family or be it your profession, is deferring to someone's expertise. It doesn't mean you can't operate in it, but if you are great at it, defer. Defer to the people who are best. That allows them to operate within their talent, how they were created. That's the part they play in your family or in your organization. And if you have to control everything, my question to you is, what are you afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
If you have to walk around your house and tell everyone that you're the man, you're the leader, you have to do what I say, you're the boss, you do that in your company or in your family, then you are not the leader.
No,
Because
if you have to tell people who you are.
that means you haven't built the trust within the organization or within your family for them to follow you. You haven't built it. If you have to demand it, you haven't built it. And there is a way to build it. Look, maybe you're new to this podcast and you haven't heard the episodes before. Jeannie has a strong personality.
No.
No, I'm serious. You do. This might be news to you. You have a strong personality, and I could take that and try to overpower you and break you because I have a strong personality. But rather than that, I want you to excel in being you. I want you to take the gifts that you have and I want you to use them to better yourself and our family. And if I try to stand in the way of that, or I try to use my ego and say, you can't do this or that, I'm the man of this house. You're not allowed. That's going to create a lot of tension, I don't. For me, I don't. It doesn't matter to me. I don't
it's,
do it because
it's not even just the tension. That right there is if you were to come at me anyway that says I can't, I'm not allowed, you don't give me permission, it is an automatic, here is my middle finger. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Watch me do it. And it has nothing to do with you being the head of the house. It has everything to do with I dealt with that as a young kid. You're never gonna, you can't, you won't, this is just not your. And it has taken me how many years to finally do the things that I'm good at and be accepting to the fact that I just don't care what other people think anymore. But that's not a place you want to be in your marriage where I'm doing my thing and you're doing your thing. And we're basically roommates because you don't like what I'm doing. I don't like what you're doing, but we'll just deal with it. It's fine. It's so stupid. They're
well,
fighting words.
I don't. I don't not do that because I'm worried about you rebelling or you flipping me the middle finger and leaving our relationship. Um, I don't not take that approach for any of those reasons. I don't take that approach because A, it's not healthy, and B, it doesn't bode to build confidence and trust and love and intimacy in our relationship.
Mhm.
I'm not your wild rebel streak. I've never been afraid of it. I'm just not. Um, I want you to excel in life. So I don't try to compete for control with you. If there might be some times where you get out of line. There might be times when I get out of line, but we trust each other to talk to buzzword it and to
Yeah,
say,
we've built that trust and that permission to say you're the only person that has this permission to pull
yeah.
me back in this situation. Anybody else is going to get the wrath, but if it's you, oh, he knows me better than anybody, so he knows.
And also, I didn't take you on as a daughter to raise you.
No.
So I have authority in our home, but I'm not a father figure to you. So there is a difference. And, people have competing views about the word. And there's a great episode with myself, with Jacob, and with Izzy, because there are places in the Bible where it's like, man is the head of woman, or, husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church,
Mhm.
or, women submit to your husbands. And I'm telling you, there was such gold in that particular episode because Jacob then took the word and talked about in Corinthians how Paul wrote and said, look, the first woman was taken from man, but every man since then has been taken from woman. So this organization in marriage is not structured in such a way where the man is the greater and the woman is the lesser. They're meant to be co-equals.
Mhm.
And if you look at this to say that you are co-equals in this relationship and you defer to one another's strengths, you will build harmony.
Mhm.
And like I say this, I'm not Jeannie's teacher, I'm not her professor, her educator, but there are some things I've had to teach her and things she's had to teach me. And one of those is there are times in our relationship, in our life, in our marriage, with our kids, family, everything, where there is logic that is needed to move through very difficult
Mhm.
situations. Naturally, I think men are built more logical. Now, the funny guys will say, yeah, women are built illogical. That's not the case. Women are built more emotional. And there are times where there is emotion that's necessary, and the logic can be toxic. It can,
Yeah.
not toxic, but it can just be misguided. And Jeannie's had to say, hey, this is how you should approach it, giving me that feedback. And so there are times where your strengths are needed to lead the family. And I had to help her learn about that when we were going through some things with our kids. You're here on the camera, you're live. You can push back if that's not true, or please tell them if it is accurate.
No, it's accurate. We had to find a balance.
So That's where I say, lead men, lead your family. And we have problems with men not even being a part of their family. In America, we're leaving it up to moms to be dad and mom and raise the family, and we as men are not showing up. There's some complications because there's also a rise in this weird feminism thing where men are the enemy. But men and women don't have to be the enemy. They can flourish together. But man,
Hmm.
autism, doing your
Autism.
thing. But there's a beauty that comes along to not, like, I don't look at Jeannie and her strong personality, and some people might. I don't look at you and go, "Ooh, I got to control that." There might be some times where I have to, like, we have to go somewhere, and it's like, "Hey, you need to check yourself, dude." But the shoe gets, you wear the same shoe because we've given each other that permission where it's like, "Hey, honey, you need to take a step back here, bro. What are you doing?" But we trust each other. We couldn't have done that when we were married 8, 9, 10 years.
Mm-mm.
It is through the process of learning and getting this experience that we do it. So I'm not here telling everybody unless I'm being funny about it. Like today, that was hilarious. I have the glasses on. You know how you're allowed to talk to me. But I have to walk around here like telling everybody that I'm the freaking boss. Like, I'm the man. You have to respect me. Let's go to church so you can have somebody else tell you that you have to be in this particular order. If that is happening, you are losing your relationship. You don't need anybody else to convince your wife or convince your husband or XYZ. What you need is your relationship to be reconciled. And then you need to discuss those things. You need to draw out the boundaries and then look at and ask yourself, what does this relationship look like? What does it look like to you? What does it look like to me? How can we take this relationship and build upon our strengths so that we can move forward? And then you teach your children the very same thing. Naturally, there will be sort of a lead to a home. And Jeannie and I have discussed it this way. We've talked about this before. When it comes to protecting, if somebody breaks in, most naturally, they're most of the time they're going to go and want to hide behind dad.
Hmm.
If there is an emotional situation where they need nurturing, most most normally they're going to go to mom. And there's a beauty in that because there's a yin and there's a yang. There's two pieces that work together to nurture and lead a family. So we're way over on time. It's an open discussion, but let me read some of these things and see if you're still there. So here's what's most important to me. A, am I making a podcast? This is a side note. Am I making a podcast that I'd want to listen to? If I'm not, I got to get some crap straight. But here's what's important to us so that you, the listener, know. It's important to me for sure. Does it have an impact? Does it have an impact on your life? And does it have value? I don't want you to waste your time here at this show. Um, so, just looking at Jeannie's, the things that she talked about, it's time, keep dating for a few years. Do not get your parents involved in your marriage. Spend more time making couples memories. Dreaming. Learn how to go to the clouds and prepare for the future. What does the future look like? What is the impact it's going to make on your relationship? And then be intentional and understand what that means. And then there's something that I developed through the process of just trying to help people find a place to start. And this is for you guys who are starting over. This is one of those techniques that Jeannie and I, or pieces of advice that Jeannie and I both agree on. And that is coming to terms with, would my spouse hurt me emotionally on purpose? You're going to have to answer that question. You and your spouse are going to have to answer it. And I encourage you to answer it as honest as possible, or as honest, period, not as possible. Answer it honestly, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to build forward and rebuild trust. If you're holding on to something, or you say, yeah, I don't think so, but maybe, or no, but maybe, then you've got some things to work out. So here's what my idea is. And, it's like have the discussion about sex. And here's the thing I talked to Jeannie about. I said, people these days have so much information. I can't believe that they don't get married, like new couples get married these days without having some of this already. You don't necessarily agree with that, which is understandable, but there's so much information out there. It would seem that people are equipped with this. This may seem like a no-brainer. Maybe it's a no-brainer to you, but it's not to everybody. And it certainly wasn't to me and Jeannie, or Jeannie and I. But we have a set of episodes called Sexpectations. It's what are your expectations about sex? That would have been great. That would have been really, really good, because we've had challenges all throughout our marriage, with sex, even point of as recent as this year with Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still working through it. I mean, to me, the best that it's ever been, but we're still working through communication and expectations about sex. Let's see, starting the discussion early, or having the advice of what are your values? What are your shared values as a couple? And then what will your shared values be as a family? So learning that, I think, is important to me.
Yeah, because we started this out with very different belief systems. We had a generalized idea, but we ran into some big hiccups that we had to
Yes.
come to terms with. And some of it was stuff that we both had to relearn and decide for ourselves what our truth was in it. We grew up in two different churches. We grew up with two different types of families. My parents stayed married. His parents were divorced. His dad had 3 marriages. So what you saw was 3 different versions of what a marriage is.
Yeah.
Whereas I had one that was constantly on the rocks for the whole time that I was in the house with them. And, what we both were brought up to believe didn't match up completely. And so we had to decide, okay, what things do we keep and what things do we make our own?
Yeah.
And how are we going to do our kids different than what we had? And it wasn't that our parents were wrong. It was that they just did what they could with what they had. For us,
you do the best you can with what you have.
Let's just be straight. My parents had 2 kids. Your parents, between the marriages, you have 4.
Yeah, 3 and then 1 and a bonus.
And so for us, no one has had triplets or twins. No one had 8. No one had autism. No one had shunts. And, there was some issue of other things, but it's like no one could give us the advice.
Yeah, we didn't have anything to compare it to, truly.
And they didn't either. So for us to try and take what other people did raising us and apply it to our kids, it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's just not the
It's
same.
just not. And then there was learn how to communicate. Now, listen, communication is such a broad spectrum. But I think Jeannie and I have both alluded to, I wish I would have had more. I wish I would have been better equipped with communication, style, and tactic. Both.
Timing. Oh my God, timing.
You shut your mouth.
Hey, do not talk finances if it's a rough spot on the way to a date. I'm just saying.
Yeah, what the heck? Well, sometimes for me, and I've done my best, and I'm still not great at it. But if there's something that needs to be said, it eats at me. And I want to be real. I want to be authentic. I don't want any kind of mess in between us when we're going to have a great time. And it gets really difficult for me. If it's sitting there, man, it's ticking. It's like,
we'll do it a couple days before the trip. Just do it a couple days before things happen.
Yeah, we've had to adapt there, and I've had to get better. She's had to get better.
I've had moments where something will come out and it's just like, that probably could have waited.
Yeah, there's been a few times I've considered the F word. I haven't said it, but I've considered it, like, well, forget you and forget her too. And then how do you receive love? I think you have alluded to that as well. Let's really take inventory on how you receive love, and how does your spouse receive love? How are your spouse's needs met? How can you communicate love to that spouse, to your spouse? And it does not, time after time after time, we try to engage people how we try to communicate to people how we receive communication. And it's a foreign language. It's just not the same.
Mm-mm.
So the more you continue to do that, well, I'm going to do this because this is what I like. Okay, well, it's not about what you like if you are there to serve the needs of one another, if you're there to meet the needs of one another. So if your wife has quality time as one of her top love languages, giving her, I'm talking to Quincy right now, giving her physical touch is not going to fill her bucket. It's quality time. That's what she wants and desires. That's what makes her feel, and feelings matter. It's what makes her feel fulfilled. It's what makes her connect with you. So stop trying to take something that communicates that you matter, that your needs matter, that you are fulfilled, and try to give that to your spouse. It's not going to happen. Here's the thing: we can have the best intentions as men. Physical touch, it's one of the top places on my list. And there's an evolution that happens depending on what circumstances are going on in your life. Some of these needs scream louder than others. But anytime I'm giving Jeannie a back rub and she does not have a shirt on, my hands 100% of the time make it around to the old boobies. And guess what? I'm a physical touch man, and that gets me in the mood. Her naked body gets me in the mood. So should I be surprised if I'm rubbing on her, giving her a back rub, and I always try to do it as innocently as possible with the right intentions? Should I be surprised that if I'm turned on and she is not turned on? No. Have I been in the past? Yes. Why is that? Because she's there to get a back rub and I'm there to be the rubber. And while I am rubbing, I am getting turned on. It's a fact. I love Jeannie's body. I love it naked. I love it clothed. That's the way it is. Now, you try to be honest and communicate that. But if you're there, maybe you're going to do something nice. You're going to rub your wife's feet, whatever it is. Do it with the right intentions. But if you want to connect with your wife, you better figure out how she receives love, connection, and attention, and give her that. Because if you don't, you are going to continue to swing and miss at the plate and go back to the dugout being very disgruntled, feeling empty, feeling rejected. And it's because you're not using the right tool. It's that simple. Please add something to that. Tell me if I'm right, wrong, or
Oh
indifferent.
no, you're completely right.
I was right about the whole back rub thing?
Oh yeah.
Getting turned on?
Mm.
Yeah, because your naked body drive me wild. I love it. I love it. Yeah, it ain't no surprise to you, woman.
I'm not surprised at all. I know what happens strategically. I
Yeah.
know exactly.
You're pretty strategic sometimes too.
I know exactly what happens.
Anyway,
But
so
it does take away from, if you're giving a back rub and your intent is to give a back rub just to help me relax or go to sleep or whatever, I expect the reaction that your body gives. But if you act on it and the original intention and the original plan was to help me relax, it does become frustrating because after a while it becomes for me, now you don't do this, but it puts you in the mindset of, are you only doing something nice for me because you're trying to get laid? If you're not genuine in what you're doing.
let me ask a question just one layer deeper than that.
Okay.
Does it frustrate you that I try to act on it, or that when I act on it and then you don't reciprocate, that I get all butt hurt? Which one is worse? Which
When
one
you
is
get butt hurt.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Because the intention, the going into it, my understanding is you're going to do something nice for me, rub my back, rub my feet, whatever, and help me relax. And that's probably just what I need, is to just relax.
Yes. Yeah.
And if at the end you come at it for something else and I'm not in the mood for it and you get upset, now I feel like crap
Right.
because I didn't I'm not trying to reject you, but this wasn't what we talked about. And I'm not in the mood for it because you just gave me a really good back rub and I'm tired. Not to mention, we have kind of come up with a different version of which back rub means what. So I know when you do certain things, oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah.
But if we've discussed it ahead of time and you change the game on me and then I'm not up for it and you get upset, it's like, well, then don't do it for me.
Yeah.
And you don't, that's the place you don't want to be with each other,
Well, that's why I wanted to clarify too, because I mean, you know,
sometimes it leads to stuff.
sometimes
It
it
just depends.
does, and there's no harm in trying, in my opinion. But if you're going, and this is from the man's side, if you are offering to give a back rub or a rub, period, you're going to get turned on because your hands are on your wife's body. I mean, it's going to happen. It's just a part of nature,
Mm-hmm.
blood rushes to a particular spot. And then, so if you try, you have to go into it knowing
This is a 50-50 shot.
there's a chance, and it could be less than 50-50. It could be more. Who knows? But you have to go into that knowing that if your intentions are pure, and then it gets to the point where it's like, okay, I want to get me some of my wife, and she says no. Like Jeannie and I we really try hard not to deny each other if we're in need. I run on want, but there are times where I need. But if it's like you're supposed to be doing this with the right intentions, and then she says no, and you get all butt hurt, you're the one that was guilty of false advertisement. Who knows how it develops, throughout the back rub or whatever. But I figured it was that part of like when I would express that I'm offended now, that I'm upset that you said no, when I went into it with, this is not for sex, this is just for you. And so I think guys need to know that, because you getting butt hurt or you getting offended or you lashing out because you're not getting sex from your wife after what was supposed to be a pure back rub is a you problem. Now, I think a lot of the times we're giving each other what it is we want.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times where if you're giving her a back rub, you give her a back rub, and it needs to be that. And if she says no and you get petulant over it, you are the problem in that moment. And don't be surprised if she gets frustrated and upset.
And tells you that you're the petulant one in the moment.
Yeah, don't be surprised, because you earned it. And you know what? You might have to go back to your wife, or who knows, women, you might have to go back to your husband. You might have to apologize and say, look, I blew it. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Will you please forgive me, and reconcile the moment? And don't wait to do it. If this is recent for you, go do it now and make it right, because that's what you need in your relationship. You need reconciliation on the things that aren't right. So let's come up with this topic of 5, and then we'll make the shows about it. We will deliver. So it's obvious that when it comes to communication, that's got to be one of them. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so communication. When it comes to, you said it already, so did I, receiving love. So we'll do that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, I didn't even say this one, I don't think. Identify your baggage. Like,
No, we didn't touch on that one. You got to figure out what each of you is bringing into the relationship, so that you can, when you get into arguments or things come up, you can see what is past and what is present, and what are you holding your spouse responsible for that isn't their responsibility.
yeah. Do you think that warrants being part of the 5?
I'm not sure. That might be a situation all on its own. That might be episodes all on their own.
Okay. And
because
then,
we have Jack and Jills that have prior marriages and things of that nature that might be more geared towards.
do you feel like, okay, that's cool with me. Do you feel like sex expectations is
Yes,
one?
absolutely.
Okay. And the frame of mind, just for you, the listener, the frame of mind I'm looking at on that is access versus initiation. That is such a big
Mm-hmm.
deal, because you can be in the spot where you think your wife is not providing you access to sex, and she can be in the spot where she's giving you access, although she's not telling you, and she's not having sex with you because you're not initiating. And if you're both missing each other on that particular part, it's going to lead to some sexual frustration. How do we know that, honey?
Been there, done that.
Been there, not done it is the problem. But yeah, it's something that we've lived.
That's one of those reasons that how do you receive love is so important too, because um it's not just physical touch. You have to know how the other one receives and gives, because life comes up with things like, oh, I don't know, surgeries and things that prevent
Mhm.
you from being able to make the normal necessary connections, and you have to figure out with each other how to bridge that for a temporary time. If you don't understand it, you don't know that you need to bridge that gap. You'll just accept it. And eventually, when you come back out of it, you're going to notice that you have a gap. You have a wedge between you. And how do you address it?
So right now we've got 1, 2, 3. I think I circled, would your spouse hurt you emotionally on purpose? But that would probably be more appropriate for people that are restarting their relationship. Would you
Yeah.
say, or would that be appropriate for everybody?
No, that's something that's after they've been hurt.
Okay. And so what do we have left? Begin the discussion of house rules and family values,
You need to be on
dreaming.
the same page with those before the marriage.
Okay, so that's something that's new, or when you're restarting your marriage. That's number 4. We need one more to make the 5. Um, so there's time, keep dating. There's do not get your parents involved. Spend more time making couple memories. Dreaming, go to the clouds.
I think the dreaming and going to the clouds is a big one, and here's why. We came into this with an understanding of what we wanted for a family. We did not come into our relationship and our marriage with an understanding of what do we want to do with our life? What do I want to be when I grow up? What would
Yeah,
I like to own my own business? Would I like to, be a stay-at-home mom? Do I want to write books? Do I want to be a podcaster? We didn't have any of these things figured out. We were just grasping at stuff to make ends meet. And then we were getting frustrated because all the things that we were trying, we were struggling with. And I think part of that needs to be discussed. For us, over the years, we've learned our retirement home needs to be our final place that we want to build the home that we want, with the land that we want, with the things that we want for our grandkids
hmm,
and so forth to have, and not be struggling paycheck to paycheck and just dealing with what we have. We don't want to settle for something. We have a goal.
yeah,
We want to go into it with, if you have a big dream that you want to own a business and you're just starting out married, and maybe you haven't done college classes, or maybe you have done college classes and now you're stuck in a job, but your goal is to own a business. What do you need to do? What sacrifices need to be made? Is it time? Is it more schooling? Is it learning a trade? All of these things, you don't think about it until you're in it, but anything that you want to build or become requires sacrifice.
yeah,
And in a marriage, if you don't discuss those sacrifices, you can actually make your spouse feel like you just don't care and you're trying to avoid them. Quincy was looking for ways to bring in income, ways to help keep food in the pantry. And all I felt was like he was just running to every opportunity to stay away from home and the kids and me. And I felt very lonely and resentful and angry. And if I had known what his intention was and what it was that he was trying to do and understood it, I might not have felt like he was running away from me. So those are things I think, that was one of the biggest impacts for us in that marriage thing that we went to. And that was years after we had been on with Rita and
yeah.
doing well. But it was just like, wow, at some point our kids are going to move out. What does life look like? What are our plans? Where do we see, when we were younger, where do we want to raise our kids? We had no clue. One wanted Alabama, one wanted California. Okay, now what? We're married.
I
What do
know
we
one said that she would never move to Texas.
Yeah, I said I'd never own a yellow house either, but you just showed me one the other day that looks really cute. But
All right. So we have the other one I don't think I discussed was being intentional. What does that mean? But that kind of that could be a part of the dreaming.
that also goes with your communication, though.
Okay. So I'm going to
That
circle
goes with
that.
both. It goes with your expectations because all of those things have to be intentional. The
Okay.
anything that you are doing as a couple, anything you are doing for build into your relationship or to better your relationship, it all has to be done intentionally.
Yeah. You have to. And we can talk to you about plenty of times where one of us needs to, or both of us needs to brush up on our intention.
Mm.
And we've both failed in that area. So that's it for this episode. Hey, I want to show you guys something, and I want to make sure that you know this is pretty cool. This new program that we have. But what's going to come up now is my website, our website, quincymoran.com/apparel. That's what it looks like. So go there, check out all that we have to offer. It's very important that you, as a listener, help us spread the word. We want to grow this platform because there are marriages out there that need what we have. And we need you to help us create that ripple effect. So just know that. And the more that we go along, we're going to start doing some live shows. And the live shows is so that you get the opportunity to interact with us in the moment, and it's not just pre-recorded. And God bless you for listening for all these years. God bless you for watching the videos. When I get them up there, I've got to recommit to that. But it's important that you get the sense that you can reach us and interact with us, because that is part of what we're here to do. So make sure you go help us spread the platform by going to quincymoran.com/apparel and checking out the brands that we have. There's some great family famous stuff there. There's some great things under the Quincy Moran umbrella, and then also under the Man versus Marriage line that you can take out and you can wear, and you can be bold enough for you guys, be man enough to share your experience and your testimony with other guys when they ask you about the shirt. Wear it to the gym, wear it in the airport, wear it wherever you go. I'm a huge Alabama fan, but I have sacrificed wearing Alabama in public because I want the podcast to get more recognition. I want men to know there's more hope. So I use accents to show people that I'm an Alabama fan in public. But I try to run around with my Man versus Marriage and family famous stuff on, because I want to impress upon men that they have a very vital role that they play in their family and their family's legacy. So get there and get after it. That is all for this episode. Over an hour and 15 minutes of minty freshness provided for you, the listener. Jeannie Moran, final thoughts?
I'm hungry. That's my final thought.
Mm.
No, I want to go make tri-tip. I'm hungry.
Oh, beef. I like it.
Don't tread on meat.
That's right. Don't tread on meat.us. Check that out. That's one of my websites, because I'm a carnivore for 6 years. You see it on the screen. Jeannie doesn't know it because she's not forward facing it, but there it is. Don't tread on meat.us. Give me liberty and beef, or give me death. That's a pure American ideal. So go check that out. It's sponsoring the show today because it is our brand. So go check it out. Part of it's for fun and part of it's for real. So go check it out. Don't tread on meat.us, quincymoran.com/apparel. Get out there, get after it. For Jeannie Moran, I am Quincy Moran, and this is Man versus Marriage. Woo, girl, you did it. The podcast.